Next up, we have David Johnson. Make sure you talk directly to the mic. So
All right.
Recorded.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like Mark Maron to stand up and be recognized.
Our hero.
And the reason that I wanted him to be recognized because you're talking about what's going on today in terms of litigation to try to change the conditions in prison. And one thing about prison is it's very dysfunctional. It's very dysfunctional and dehumanizing. And it's a struggle for the average common prisoner under those conditions to stay in touch with his humanity. For myself, what I used to do is every day I'd wake up and I would say, please, let me be a good human being today. Because you hear so much in the news about prisoners coming out of that environment and committing horrendous acts. And what the response to that is, longer terms, and lock them up, put them away, segregation, SHUs, maximum security, some of them are underground. That is what is put on society as a remedy for that, for those kind of actions. But I would tell you this, the real remedy is to humanize those environments and allow prisoners to understand good, positive values, because the values in those institutions are horrifying. It's a subculture. There's a monetary system, there's norms that prisoners have to abide by, independent of the overall norms of society. And a lot of those norms are very twisted. It's like there's so much going on. For myself, I was one of the first people to be able to take college courses. Well, matter of fact, I was the one and only one. And that was a struggle because there was a woman outside named Jay Charlin who was an educator. And after I finished graduating from high school, in the prison system, I wanted to take college courses. The prison system didn't have college courses, but it was through her actions and working through UC Berkeley that I was able to take 2 college courses. One of the courses was the making of a counterculture, because I wanted to understand certain things as it related to culture and society and how culture works. So after I completed my courses, I didn't take any more because about that time our trial was going to start. But instead of allowing other prisoners to have the opportunity to to higher education, to shut the program down. And those kind of programs are non-existent in the prison system. And one of the things that we did, and this is where Mark comes in, we challenged the conditions and the rules and regulation of the prison system. We challenged the fact that people could not have outdoor exercise. We challenged the fact that people could not have representation when they went to the disciplinary committees, and reading material. I mean, there was an abundance of things that we challenged as it related to how the prison system was treating prisoners. And we won. Yes, we won. We had to be, when we got a disciplinary infraction, we had an investigator, even though he was the police, we had an investigator. We were allowed to call witnesses, you know, and I know for myself, I got one write-up, and, you know, I called guards, I called inmates, you know, and I got found out guilty. I think that was the last write-up I got. I got found not guilty. For years, we had not been able to have outside exercise. Okay, when we won, the judge said, you gotta make access for them to have outside exercise. So they built a yard, you know, but the way they set the yard up was a yard for us and a yard for everybody else. You know, so we had a yard. There was only 6 of us to go on the yard, but the other inmates exercised at the same time, so we had a chance to talk to them. You know, it seemed okay. Like I said, when we talk, our efforts in that litigation, and our efforts in the way we resisted what was going on, is we wanted to humanize that environment. You know, because we understood what it did to people. I saw, you know, during my time in the AC, I saw people who committed suicide. I mean, not visually, but within the context of the environment. You know, and Luis had a very close friend who some kind of way committed suicide, you know. And people who couldn't stand the conditions tried to get instruments, they would slash their wrist, you know. And when I was in B section before I got to the adjustment center, I was a tier tender. And there was a guy who took a razor blade and tried to castrate himself. You know, and basically, I guess he cut open his testicles, you know, and put them in the toilet. So, and this was around breakfast time. So you know, the guard came off the tier and he told his superior officer what had took place, and the superior officer told him to go up there and get the evidence out of the toilet. You know, so, you know, since he had rank, he said, okay, your job, you go get it, you know, and took the guy to the hospital. I seen that guy, because they had sent him to Vacaville, and I seen that guy a few years later because they brought him back from Vacaville and they put him down on a tier with us. And I almost didn't recognize him, you know, because of the changes, because, you know, he had tried to castrate himself, you know, and I guess testosterone is a part of, you know, being masculine. And I looked at him, and his chest, he was like, you know, like growing breast, you know. And I looked at him, I said, weren't you in B section? And, you know, and he remembered me, but he was a totally different person, because of what he had done to himself and the physiological changes that occurred as a result of his action, you know. And then there was another guy who we knew. He tried to cut his wrist, so they sent him to Vacaville. And then they brought him back. And when they brought him back, I mean, he was, the best way to say it, he was crazy. He was worse off when they brought him back from Vacaville. I mean, he was in another world. He wasn't here. But that's an example of what those conditions do or have and cause people to self-destruct, for, you know, for a better way of putting it. You know, but our objectives and our goals as revolutionaries was to build a new man. And it's just like George said, discover your humanity in revolution. And that's what we did. And we tried to get other prisoners to understand that. You know, it's like Bato, my comrade here. He's a published poet. And he continues to write poetry today. But that was a way that he freed himself from the madness of that environment. I wrote poetry, but I wasn't like him. I didn't get published. So we read, we studied, you know, we had books. When they let us have access to books, we ordered a lot of books that dealt with revolution, that dealt with revolutionary struggles, you know, that dealt with psychology, that dealt with philosophy, you know. We turned the AC into a university. People coming into the AC would ask us questions. So, you know, they'd ask me a question, well, what about this and what about that? I'd give them a book. I'd say, here. You know, I'm not literally, but I'd pass them and say, I'd send them a book. Here. When you finish reading that, then we can have a conversation. You know, because I wanted them to develop the ability to develop the ability to make the good sound decisions and have a correct understanding of what, you know, our principles and values are and should be. You know, so that all changed since we left. I mean, everything that we tried to do, that prisoners continue to try to do today, and I think you and Caitlin, I think she's involved in that in that continuum of litigation against conditions, because everything that we did to change it, they found ways to circumvent it. And now with this new litigation, if it's not stayed on, they're going to find a way to circumvent it. You know, just like with our comrade Yogi, okay, he was a victim of a racist attack. Now this is supposed to be during a time when there's a truce against hostilities. But understand this, racists do not respect truth. It may be respected by the general population, but the racist is against anything that's going to be positive and bring us together. And the state will use them at every chance they get to justify mistreatment, violence, and keeping those places concealed. Censorship, I mean, you know, like now, what Dan has said, prisoner who has a book by George Jackson, it's going to be locked up. Or it's going to be labeled. I know when I went back, and, you know, and I went to the committee, and one of the things they did to me, they make me strip down, go into the committee, turn around, you know, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But what they were doing is looking for tattoos. I got some, but they in no way indicate any kind of membership in a gang or organization or anything. And they used to ask me, well, weren't you one of this, or weren't you? Hey, I am not with nothing. Well, okay, and there's like the area code, the 415. Well, I came out of the Bay Area. Oh, at area code 415. Hey, man, I'm not with nothing.
He's with me.
and the thing was, they were trying to find a way to label me. But I'm not going to admit membership in nothing if it's going to be a way for them to justify mistreating me as a human being. And just like I used to tell them, just because you got that badge and that uniform does not give you the right to mistreat me or treat me less than a human being. And those are the kind of actions that have gotten us locked up, that have kept us continually locked up. because nobody has the right, I don't care who it is, or what organization, or what, institution or government has the right to treat anybody less than a human being. And so I guess I'll conclude with that, because my time was very short.
Okay. Thank you. Next up, we have Luis Bato Talamantez.
I'm not sure I need this. We need to record it. Oh, okay. Let me just stand up. Every time David talks, he rattles me some, so I'm sort of going back to a lot of stuff he remembers that I hadn't had in mind right now. But just his story, the long trial, and it just drug on, and come Friday, we'd have a court disruption, so we could get back to the prison and maybe get a hot tray. And after a while, the judge caught on to what was going on. So that particular Friday, this defendant disrupted the court, we got rolled up and taken back. And so the judge issued an order that I should spend the night in solitary confinement. And then come Monday, when we came back to court, everybody could go in the courtroom, and I got to stay in the holding tank for the whole day. So went back to AC and solitary confinement overnight. And they put me back on the other side where David and them were. Nobody said anything, but the thing was kind of left hanging, so what am I going to do come Monday? So I didn't say anything, but then Hugo on Sunday, he was like, he asked me in Spanish, ¿Qué pasó? And if I was going to go to court. I told him no. I told him, but no te metes, don't get involved with it. And that's all that was said. Because I already knew what was going to happen. The guards came in early Monday rattling their chains and making a lot of noise and slamming doors and shit. And the other lieutenant came down the tier and just went to each cell and said, "Are you going to court today?" I didn't say anything. I don't know what anybody else said. I didn't know. The thing is that I guess it was on me to do something, And so they came in, they had their gas masks on, they was ready, And they, instead of coming to me, who was the provocateur to the whole thing, they went down to Yogi's cell. And they put the gas on him, and the whole cell block filled up with gas. They gassed us good, and the big old red canister, the kind of gas they used in Vietnam back in them days, And they had their big gas mask on, and and then they blasted David here. He was next to Yogi. And then they saved me for last. They came to my cell. By that time, I had my head in the toilet, trying to breathe, And they came to my cell, and then before they racked the cell door, you could hear when the door opened, man, they hit me with a missile. It hit me right in the back, boom, right in the back. It burned the hell out of me. And then they racked the door, and they came in and grabbed us, and they took us to court. They had wrist locks on us and all that shit, and they were wearing gas. And we were wearing these white overalls, and we were all chained up, and they took us to court for the judge's order, of course, And we got to court, and everybody was in an uproar, the attorneys, the audience, everybody was saying, and they smelled us coming before they seen us. And we had gas coming out of our hair. It was just amazing, And the funny part about it was that everybody was saying, "Hey, man, this guy's a gas, make it smell like gas." And we're in the courtroom, and my attorney, Bob Carroll, he got up and he was protesting. He was livid. I mean, and everybody's eyes were watering and their faces were red. And the judge sat up there. The judge really looked shaken. The judge leaned way over and said, "What gas?" And then he took off the bench, and that was it. He was gone. He packed the record. One was his last words, "What gas?" Right? So he wasn't a dumb judge. But the funny part about it later on is that unheard of, he issued another order saying that, well, if any of us 6 didn't feel like coming to court, we didn't have to come to court no more. And so he gave us carte blanche. We didn't have to go to court no more. Even our trial was on. It's like amazing, you know. So that'll be good on a reversal for sure. You know, nothing else will be. So all due respect to Yogi, who's not here, he always took a beating for everybody. And all the stories, this story is not in Dan's book. There's all the stories that nobody will ever really know about. All the things that happened during those years we were going to court. And I never had to say thanks to David here. And Hugo, he was the most gracious person.
Right on.
He was so gracious. Never mentioned a word. How many people that I know would get gas for you? And he got it good. That's all I got to say.